Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forgotten Generation podcast, hosted by Troy Njenje Mbanga. This podcast is about amplifying young people's voices and the journeys they're on. I am joined by Mark, who is an OWL ambassador for Northern Ireland, but also a youth activist. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. So I'm Mark Brashier. I'm one of the Students Union presidents for the 2025-2026 academic year at one of Northern Ireland's six further education colleges. Alongside this, I'm also an IWOL ambassador and an active volunteer with a number of charities, each aiming to make their own positive impact in the wider community. And for tiny bit of promotion for Troy, but for those who maybe haven't heard anything before, I was also on the podcast for I Will Week 2025.
Absolutely, yes, she was, and it's so good to have you on this episode and today. And so, what is your youth social action?
Um, I'm going to say primary social action is around student voice, student advocacy, basically all things students in the tertiary education sector would be the most simplest primary explanation.
Oh, that's great. What inspires you to make a difference and be who you are and today in your journey?
So it's really just been a journey which started years ago with the Army Cadet Force, actually. I joined it as soon as I could at 12, went through that program. It gave me discipline, confidence, resilience, and basically what it means to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And then from that, I took a number of lessons from that. How to work with people from lots of different backgrounds, beliefs, and all of that. And then, as much as I enjoyed that, where I am today really was started in the 2023-2024 academic year when I was elected as International Students Officer for our Bangor campus in my Students Union. Then campus president for the following academic year before now serving as union president for this academic year, which has been a huge set of steps, and to work on a bigger scale and work on issues that actually matter, like tackling violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland. And from all these roles, I've seen firsthand how young people and students, when listened to properly, can achieve more, which is why I'm running for re-election in my local union. And then on top of that, I also do the likes of being an ambassador for the I Will movement, which the role really connects strongly with what's already happening in the student sphere, but then expanding on that and adding network. And that message is really important for many young people who have the ideas, the energy to lead, the energy to make change, the passion. It's about having the right platform, really. The yeah, looking back, everything kind of started around the Army Cadets, but then developed with the Students' Union them into fundamentally something meaningful. And I still carry all the lessons from throughout all my experiences, but that's my personal story. Hopefully, lots of people can draw upon small little things.
And exactly, and you've done so much in your journey, like you're an ambassador, you've been part of the cadets, but and you also touched on about union president. And what is it like and being part of that for so many and students who want to have that voice?
So it would be what's a few things. First of all, just having that privilege to have been trusted and elected for the role. So just having that in my subconscious. But it's really positive because you get to meet so many different people across all the campuses. My union is a part. We work in all of the college's campuses, and the college currently has 7 sites. So meeting all those different types of people with different backgrounds, different beliefs, all the way from the north of County Down all the way down to the likes of Newcastle, which is more southern, near the Northern Ireland border, for example. So being able to meet all those cross community backgrounds, but then even just meeting people in my own campus who have a different experience to my own because something is fundamentally different, which is giving them that background then.
I love that, and I love how there's so much that you've done as union president for Belgian people. I think it's so inspiring, and so thank you so much for sharing that. And so, what has been one barrier you face as a young person, as a young change maker, making change in the community and wider?
I would have to say that as a young change maker, it would probably be with my neurodiverse diagnosis. I'm not going to go into specifics on, like which one specifically, but basically for me, it's the likes of social cues and the likes of that I can process differently from others. For myself, it's not like the stereotypes or the common things like sensory overload or needing as much time to recharge from social settings. Specifically, the social recharge, I'm quite lucky with being union president, but it does take extra effort to read the room, especially in fast paced environments. So meetings, debates, networking, the likes of that. And it does kind of like slow things down. So building those quick connections, especially when like leading change in the college's governance, I might misread, or someone else may misread because I'm not sure how to process the information. And then I also just randomly decode what's said, which is very distracting when it actually isn't necessary in the moment. But with that, it does have its positives though, because you're able to build a sense of resilience, push to make things clear, especially with different aspects like communication. And it's basically turning challenge where possible into a strength, and then as union president, for example, turning that strength into a wider strength for the movement.
And exactly, and it's just so important, I think, to highlight those like Aboriginal people who might struggle with social cues, but also and taking information. Because I know I'm like that, where I have to like take lots of information. Actually, can I have things broken down in smaller chunks? I mean, it kind of helps me with like on different things like meetings or public speaking because it can be a lot, can't it? And I'm sure you have found it very hard sometimes, and maybe being in front of people and trying to like and do the things that you do as a union president, but for those people who might not understand your needs.
Yeah, definitely.
And have you ever felt sometimes it's hard for them to understand like on what you go through?
It really depends on who you're specifically talking to, because nowadays more than ever, everything basically, not just neurodiverse conditions, or well, not those things what you live with. It's not just the neurodiverse aspect, but just a broad range of things that people live with. Everything is statistically higher than what was maybe 100 years ago. So you never know who you're going to be speaking with. But then the people who do have that understanding, you do tend to notice that they do understand because they've lived with it, as well, compared to those who haven't. It really just depends, but generally, especially in the Students Union, we're most, if not all of us, who are elected officers do have that understanding. So I'm happy to say that for at least my union at this stage, we do understand and support neurodiversity. But it's just, wider community understanding would be the biggest thing.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that your union very much understands about neurodiversity, as I've explained before. And that's something I think needs to be highlighted from across unions. Like, it's so important to help those like emerging people who actually go through that and union officers and work, and also also young people in college to and get the right support and get the right needs met for them. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so, what are the key issues you think young people are facing right now, and what would be your hope for as decision makers and professionals and to do better in supporting our voice?
In terms of the student voice, and student voice in my aspect is from the age of 16 and onward, so it does also significantly include youth voice, but with students specifically, there is a huge variety of things, because there's localized issues that maybe Northern Ireland is only experiencing or Scotland's only experiencing, or could be more systemic issues, but off the top of my head, I'm just going to say three of the more prominent issues that I commonly note on a day-to-day basis in Northern Ireland would be further education, student union funding, as well as just funding for further education in general, as well as rising violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland. And 98% of women have reported experiencing some kind of abuse. And then there's just a lack of collaboration between further education colleges, specifically their student unions. Diving a wee bit more deep into each of those three. So FE unions lack ring-fenced funding. So that's a huge pressure, especially when, neighbouring universities. So in Northern Ireland, we've got Queen's University Belfast and Ulster University. Queen's University, they have an exponentially larger budget than ours. Both unis do. But with Queen's specifically, if I recall, it's about 1 million times larger than ours. After staff costs were left between about £2,000 to £3,000 to make decisions and support the student voice for the entire academic year. So dedicate FE union funding so that we can support a variety of issues. So period poverty, awareness on things like neurodiversity, tackling violence against women and girls with our Green Dot program is an overshadowing issue. And then with the Green Dot campaign, that ties nicely into tackling violence against women and girls. So it is quite rampant, and we cannot really ignore it. It is there. It is an issue that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. So my students' union, as well as all the other unions, signed the Ulster University Students Union Charter on tackling violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland. And then earlier this academic year, we launched our Green Dot Bystander Intervention campaign. I do have to give a quick shout to the 2025-26 Student Union team, as well as our women's officer for our Bangor campus for the support on both the wider campaign and the Green Dot campaign, as well as the 2024-2025 elected team for the Ulster University Students Union Charter work. But professionals should amplify these within local and student-led efforts, and giving more resource and backing to these. And then the final point I'd mentioned was the college Students Union collaboration. So I've been in the movement since 2023. And from this, I've seen that FE unions in NUSUSI, for context, NUSUSI is the National Union of Students in Ireland. But basically, all the FE unions barely talk despite, everyone's best efforts. So there's official and unofficial chats between the union presidents, for example, for the North, and decisions. They require that structure, but it's just not really there. And that kind of plays into the overshadowing with funding. So everything does tie in together in some way, but there's that lack of FE communication, and then that just knocks into everything. So I'd urge professionals, policymakers, to listen actively. Some do, thankfully, others don't. And it's basically fund the platforms properly and create spaces where local solutions and wider solutions can be formulated, made, and actioned, and not just advise, for example, because when actions are being taken in hand, that's how you can then make voices count then.
And exactly, and I absolutely agree on what you have said, and especially against like violence against women and girls, like that is a very important topic that kind of doesn't get talked about as much, but also I feel like it's lack support with, because a lot of girls go through a lot of like safety trouble in the community, maybe like in the streets, maybe at night, and they go off somewhere, and maybe something happens, but like and it shouldn't happen though, and everyone should feel safe in the community. And I think we need to tackle that a bit more, and we need to get those policymakers and decision makers more understanding of these issues. And you also do like I touched on about like further education. Further education is so important for those young people who want to get to further education, who want to do more stuff academically. And I feel like there needs to be more funding, but it's because I feel like it's less funding, which is very sad, because a lot of them have so much of potential and to go out of their way and have a dream career that want to go in, or maybe they want to do something that like that they find hard, that they want to really push to, but needs that funding and needs that extra support, which is really not much, is there?
Yeah. So I'll I'm going to actually just bounce back on the points you've said, just with some more information for those listening. So as I mentioned earlier, 98% of women report. So that measurement in on itself, report. Not everyone reports everything. So no, not everyone reports when they've seen something to the police, for example, and it could be a variety of reasons on why you choose not to report, but 98% do report, and then there's the unreported numbers, and then when we're talking about sexual violence, it's normally referred to in a pyramid. So at the base, the foundation is, the intimidation, public harassment, unsolicited sexual conversations, and then it goes all the way up to, all those really, really violent crimes. And then from that, it's, you've got everything in between those, things that are systemic, and, some people, that's just how wherever I am is to those really serious crimes. But then you've got everything in between as well that you've got to consider. Basically, with the likes of Green Dot, it's basically targeting that base of the pyramid, removing that, because if you take away the base of a pyramid, the pyramid can't stand. So it's aiming to significantly reduce things at the base to then reduce everything further up the pyramid. And then in regards to further education funding, as you were saying, FE is quite important. So in Northern Ireland, specifically, most healthcare professional roles going into undergrad require a level 3 in health and social care, which you can only really get from further education institutions. So specifically, there was a consultation put out by the Northern Ireland Assembly on a multi-year budget. So Northern Ireland runs on a year-by-year budget, but it was a consultation to put out into a 3-year multi-year budget. Looking over that consultation, it's really looking at real-term losses, unfortunately, for further education, because it looks on paper like, oh, there's an increase, but when you consider, some programs aren't going to be funded by the UK government anymore, or inflation, it is a real term loss. So then you've got to consider, what things can you acceptably, cut, reduce, and you really don't want to impact and add stressors to students. But with how funding is, that's just how things are going to go. I'm sure, everyone in the Northern Ireland Assembly, as well as, more departmentalised, as well as the wider national government and their departments, are trying to work on that issue, maybe with some pressure from the National Students Union, for example, but doing that work to not penalise students for actually wanting to learn would be the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do hope listeners have took away on what you said, because I think those are very much important points added into what I was saying. So thank you so much, Mark. And so what would be your advice to a young person wanting to make a difference but don't know how to?
I would really say just start small, saying yes to an opportunity that may pop up here and there that excites you, even if it feels maybe accidental at first. Like I did, transitioning from the Army Cadets to the Students Union, for a bit of context with that. So my journey began with youth leadership in the Army Cadets, where I first learned what meant to be a part of something bigger. And then, as much as I enjoyed that, I went to Student Voice in 2023, 2024, went through all those roles, and it's, how that's progressed on. But basically, start small, even if it feels accidental, and then things just like build confidence gradually. Join your college or university's club or volunteer locally. So like me, for example, outside of being union president and an I Will ambassador, I volunteer with St John Ambulance, Northern Ireland. So finding something that interests you, build confidence, and then connect and collaborate, which was the case with me, finding the I Will movement so appealing.
Exactly. Because there's so much things you can do. And there's so much like collaborations that you can be part of, and lots of organisations who do incredible voice work, like local councils, and all the things that you said is so important for any person who wants to make a difference. So definitely think about that when you're listening to this episode. And so, what would be your Forgotten Generation podcast quote and sum up your journey?
It would be that sometimes the greatest leaders you may see are born from accidental steps. So saying yes when a door closes, and then turning that closed door into another open door. So that kind of captures my journey perfectly, leaving the Army Cadets without a plan and stumbling into the SU and growing into real impact has led to the likes of our Green Dot Bystander Intervention Programme. It's not about scripted path always, but grabbing opportunities as they appear.
I love that advice, Mark, and that is a great way to end this episode today. So thank you so much, Mark, for coming on today to really highlight your social action journey and just really making that difference to incredible young people that you do your volunteering and social action in. So thank you.
And thank you, Troy, for being such an incredible host again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the podcast episode. This is a Be the Change Media Network production. Please support the podcast by subscribing and rating the podcast. I'd love to hear what you like and what could be better for future episodes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram and iwill.troy, and also on X, iwill_Troy. Tune in to next week's episode.